blessings, for life, for opportunity to give service above self, for friendship, for fellowship. We thank thee, O Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So, I was the past president many years ago, and I got to introduce my wife. And back in the old days, the ladies were referred to as Rotarians, and I introduced her as a Rotarian one time. But today she's put up with me for over 50 years. And so I'm going to introduce her as Dr. D, a retired professor at the University of North Carolina. I did remember to introduce her. So what I thought I would do, since I'm talking about all this age, I must really be older than I am. But I'm going to do 50 years of club history in 2 minutes. And this club was founded by Phil Rominger. And he got everything going, and he had that foundation in his name. But when I came in, Dave McGowan brought me in. It was 50 years ago. And I said, what am I doing here? Look at all these important people. What can I do? Why am I here? And Dave said, you'll find out. And so time passed. And for new members, I'll say it's going to take 1 or 2 years before you fully understand what Rotary is about, what this club is, and the service we give. It is a service club. And if you think about the service we do, if you've been to Haiti or Honduras with us and looked in the eyes of the kids and the parents that we took care of their kids, you'll know what it means. And if you look at the teachers at the teacher supply store, they're very, very happy to see us too. And the bikes, I always enjoy seeing the kids get the bikes at Christmas. And the dinners, these guys put on a dinner for people who are staying with their kids real sick and they're already stressed out, but this is where we give them a good dinner. We raise a lot of money. Paul Harvey said Rotary is the quietest charity in the world because we never seek any recognition. I believe he was right. And Paul Ransford was fond of talking about the bedrock goodness of Rotarians, and I think I agree with him. Fellowship. That's the other part of our meeting. And you'll make some friends, and the older members are going to smile at me when I say you'll make friends of a lifetime. They'll be here many, many years from now. We had some happiest days to be here. And I was told one time to come to Rotary on the happiest days of your life and on the worst days of your life. And that has been true. We've had fellowship at the Rooster Cabin, family gatherings, bus trips, Civil War trips, all kinds of trips. We even had a talent show once that spawned the fabulous No Times. And now here comes the funny thing about women in the club. We didn't have any women in the club. Nobody much thought about it. And we were advised that we should have women in the club. In fact, one lady came to this room many years ago before we had women in the club and convinced us, I don't know how many of you were here or remember it, but that was a clue to have women in the club. And Julie, are you here? You're one of the first, I think.
Yeah, you know what I used to say? People would ask me about East Chapelville Rotary, and at that time I said it's 125 men and 3 women, and the other 2 were afraid to come.
Well, as it turned out, it's best for everybody. We now have a lady president, we have a lady district governor, and we're going to do our best to increase our membership. I know when we were a small club, we had 50 members, and we said, well, that's about enough. No, it wasn't. We were not letting good guys in to give service themselves, so we increased our membership. So now we're up to a good, healthy membership. And I'm supposed to tell a funny story, so I will. In retirement, I work with the Department of Aging in Chapel, Orange County. And so we go see the seniors. I go sometimes with the deputy sheriff or a social worker. So we went to see Aunt Ruth. And if you ever met Aunt Ruth, she was your aunt, Aunt Ruth. Didn't matter if you were older than her, she was your aunt. And one time Aunt Ruth was driving through Hillsborough, and a rookie policeman stopped her for speeding. She said, "Man, do you know you were speeding?" I said, "No." "Can I see your driver's license?" I don't have any driver's license." "Well, can I see your car registration?" "I don't have any car registration." "Well, whose car is it?" "I don't know, I didn't ask his name." "Well, where is he?" "Oh, he's in the trunk." So the rookie officer backs up and calls reinforcements, and they all come thinking there's a murder here or something like that. And so the chief of police goes out to "Oh, it's you, Aunt Ruth. Man said you didn't have a driver's license." He said, "Oh, yeah, here it is. There's my driver's license." "And registration?" "Oh, yeah, here it is. Here's my registration." "And you had something in your trunk?" "Well, let's look and see." She opened the trunk, there's nothing in there. And Aunt Ruth says, "That officer tried to tell you I didn't have a driver's license, I didn't have registration, and there was a dead man in my trunk. He probably tried to tell you I was speeding too." And one last thing for the new members, like I said 50 years ago, I was trying to figure out, what am I doing here? And the same thing they told me, you'll find out. You don't have to pay up.
Thanks, Ed. We're passing the fine basket around. My name is Omar Zinn, and I'm also known as El Presidente, to some, the dictator. We have a few announcements. We have an induction. We're going to pass it over to Tom. Tom has an announcement he'd like to make.
Okay, be real quick. Green Team has another project that all of you are welcome to participate in if you'd like. On November 19th, we're going to be doing a planting with the Chapel Hill Library down in that area around Pritchard Park. They've got about 8 to 10 trees. These are going to be bigger trees, like 25-gallon tubs or balls. Whoa. They're going to dig the holes, so all we got to do is mulch and put up the fencing around them. So put it on your calendar. If you're interested, we're happy to have you, and more will come. I'll put an email in the scuttlebutt so you can send me a note if you're interested, and I'll tell you on details. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. What's the date on that?
November 19th.
November
Saturday
19th.
morning.
Saturday morning. Thank you, Tom. Lorenzo. Yes, Lorenzo has an announcement.
Hey everyone, so this is directed toward newer members. I sent out an email this morning, but if any of you have a child in high school, there is an opportunity to form a Rotary club in high school, which is called Interact. And it's a really cool thing in terms of extending Rotary into the school system, having a project that you can work on with your kid. And there's a lot of evidence that founding a club can really enhance your child's college application. So if that interests you, reach out to me, please.
That's the perfect reason to start a Rotary Club. It's all about your child's education and their future. Thank you, Lorenzo. We have a few birthdays this week I'd like to recognize. If any of these people are here, please stand up. Freddie Kiger, Jody Magnus, Bob Ward, and we know Ed Loudermilk's here. 1, 2, 3, roll and say happy birthday. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday! All right. We have a football tailgate coming up. Is Chris Richards here? Okay, October 1st, Virginia Tech. Do we have the sign-up sheet, Tim Smith? Has that been passed around? Yeah. Okay, we'll pass around the sign-up sheet. We have a tailgate going on. You don't have to go to the game. You can go to the game. We've rented a tent. I know that I believe Mike Clayton and Chris are going to both be bringing barbecue. You get
barbecue cook-off.
Little barbecue cook-off. There'll be other food there and lots of beverages, I'm sure. So put that on your calendar. Please sign up. Send the sheet around to each table. Last night we had a great time over at my house. We had a potluck cookout. Mike Clayton manning the grill. Had a wonderful time. Had about 45 people show up. It was wonderful to just mingle, talk, chat, and get to know each other a little bit better. So we're going to try and keep doing more of those things this year that are outside of the Sheraton, just more fellowship. Our fundraising committee has finalized an actual fundraiser. What started out as a duck race down Bowling Creek. We quickly realized there just wasn't enough water flow. There were some bureaucratic issues with making that happen, but there just really wasn't enough water in Bowling Creek to make that happen. So what we're doing now, this is our official fundraiser. We are kind of piggybacking onto the Chapel Hill School Foundation's 5K. They have about 2,000 participants in their 5K every year. They have a huge email list of from all the parents in the Chapel Hill Colorado City schools. They have a huge email list of people who have participated in their 5K in the past. So we're going to be selling raffle tickets at $10 a pop. We'll definitely encourage our members here to send out email to their friends. The school foundation will send out emails. We'll also be selling raffle tickets the day of the race. And we're going to be looking for volunteers to help out, to man some booths, to sell tickets the day of the race. Use your phone, use your computer to electronically make that happen. The grand prize will be $1,500. Prize number 2 will be $1,000. Third place prize will be $500. So that'll be our fundraiser. We hope to raise a bunch of money. Here at the Sheraton, are all y'all enjoying the Sheraton here? That much? The Sheraton, I mean, we've left the country club, but it's great to be back here at the Sheraton. Along with transitioning from the country club to the Sheraton comes increased expenses. So there will be, you will be getting an email just letting you be aware of what the board passed, a resolution this past week. There'll be a dues increase of about 9%. That'll be happening on your next billing cycle. Also, we've been donating $140, $35 a quarter to the local Rotary Foundation. And those same dues, those same fees will now be transitioned into our annual operating budget. So you're not going to be spending any more besides a 9% increase, but that $140, which was tax deductible, will now be part of our general operating budget, and we are doing that to balance the budget. We haven't been keeping up with inflation, we haven't been keeping up with expenses, and so that's what I'm trying to do that's what we're all trying to do on the board to make that whole. Now I'd like to bring up Gavin for our induction. And then Erica, also during our induction, we're going to give you a minute to tell us a little bit something about yourself as well, which didn't happen last week. Thank you.
Thanks, Bud. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? It's my pleasure to do one of the most important things that we do as a club, which is welcome new members. And so today it is my pleasure to induct Michael McMillan. Michael, why don't you come on? Why don't you and Lorenzo come on up front? Fellow Rotarians, it's the duty of our Rotary Club to add new members from time to time so that we may not only increase our usefulness and influence as a club, but also to extend the spirit of Rotary throughout our community and indeed our world. Today we welcome to our ranks and admit to membership Michael McMillan. Rotary is an international organization of business and professional people with more than 33,000 clubs in over 200 countries. Mike, I wish to impress upon you that you've been admitted not only to the Rotary Club of East Chapel Hill, but to a worldwide association of over 1.3 million like-minded business and professional leaders. With the pin you're about to receive, you're entitled to travel the world, find a Rotary Club within easy distance, be warmly welcomed by fellow Rotarians, even though the language may be different, the food unusual, and the location far from home. Mike, the honor and privilege of Rotary membership also carries with it duties and obligations. You'll be expected to attend our club's meetings regularly, to enthusiastically perform your share of club service through our teacher supply store, youth services, monthly family house dinners, bike nights, dental missions, and other causes, and to actively participate in our fellowship activities like our holiday party, Valentine's lunch, steak night, pop-up events, and to place your knowledge and talents at the disposal of the club. Always remember Rotary's motto, service above self, and our goal in Rotary is to encourage and foster, first, the development of fellowship as an opportunity for service, second, high ethical standards in business and professions, third, dignifying each Rotarian with an opportunity to serve society, fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world of people united in the ideal of service and fellowship. Rotary challenges you to live by the Rotary four-way test in all that you say or do. And that test asks, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Mike, do you accept this challenge and commitment?
I do.
Perfect. And I ask all of our members to rise. Michael McMillan, in the name of Rotary Club of East Chapel Hill, it's now my honor and privilege to formally admit you to membership in our club and ask your sponsor, Lorenzo, to affix our emblem pin to your lapel. We welcome you, and your first and most important task to date will be to give a very brief introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and how you can help be a part of this club.
Well, thank you, everyone. You may be seated. It's an honor to be a member of the East Chapel Rotary Club. Just briefly, when Lorenzo told me I was to be inducted, I tried to remember the last time I was inducted to anything or what I knew about an induction. And the only one that came to mind was Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. And that didn't work out so well for him. And I thought, no, Lorenzo would never do that to me. And I thought, that name, Lorenzo, I don't know. But so far, so good. I'm a resident of Durham, a native of Durham. I went to Carolina, graduated in 1979, lived in New York City and the New York area for about 40 years. Ran a public relations firm up there and came back to Chapel Hill 4 years ago with my wife. Our 5 children are scattered around the country. It's been a delight to be back here in Chapel Hill and to get to know the city again and the region. And among the most wonderful people we've met is Lorenzo and his lovely wife. So again, thank you, and I look forward to getting to know everyone better and participating in all the great works that you guys do.
Erica, would you mind coming up here and just giving your member minute as well, please?
Hey everyone, so I was inducted last week with Jennifer, but she couldn't make it this week. My name is Erica Brana-Shutt. You may recognize my maiden name. My parents are Anna Heath and Kim. We're longtime locals of Chapel Hill. So I was born and raised here. Went to school at Carolina, swam here at Carolina, do not swim anymore. Max, I had a tennis lesson this morning, so I'm trying to get into other things besides swimming. So after college, I moved to New York City for 8-9 years. Worked in finance up there, so I worked on the UBS trading floor and the Bear Stearns trading floor, and then had enough of New York and the crazy rat race. So decided it was time to come back to Chapel Hill. I moved back here about 14 years ago with my husband. I work at Morgan Creek Capital Management, which you guys may know. Mark Husto has spoken here a couple times. I head up their investor relations team there. I have 3 wonderful kids who keep me busy. Ages 10, Harrison is 10. He is into golf and into basketball, and I have 2 daughters, Charlotte and Alexandra. They are into field hockey and volleyball. So we're very, I bleed Carolina blue, and so is my family. My daughters are 9 and 7. And I tell them every week that they are very blessed to live in Chapel Hill and have such a wonderful university right in our back door. We're going to the field hockey game tonight to cheer on the women's field hockey team. that's about it, I think. Very happy to be here and really, really looking forward to doing some wonderful service projects in the community. I feel like those are important things that I want to make time for, and you can always make time for that kind of stuff. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
Jim, would you like to introduce our speaker? I've been told that we're going to do away with the podium now, so I will move that. It's no demonstration of my strength or anything like that. I've been asked to do this.
Well, to get our speaker on, because what he has to say is more important than what I have to say, but I do think it's important to put this into perspective. All day, every day, we are focused, all of us together, regardless of where you went to school, what your race is, your gender is, as human beings, we're always looking at that bright, shiny object of today's news, what's in the story right now, what gossip we can talk about. And fortunately, there are some among us who have spent their lives looking at the long view, which has to do with whether this planet that we enjoy is going to be one that will be fit for the human experience 100 years from now, and how we get from here to there without bankrupting the countries who are going to have to make the extraordinary changes in their economies and their culture in order to get us through it. No one is better equipped to do that than Stephen Arbogast, who gave up a terrific career around the world at Exxon to come and give back by being a part of our faculty at the King and Flagler Business School. And we could say a lot more about him, but let's get him on. Stephen Arbogast.
Hey everybody, can you hear me in the back there? Is that good? I had the privilege of actually talking to this Rotary Club 3 or 4 years ago, I think in the same room, although it was configured differently at that point in time. And I took away a vivid memory from that, which is that somebody gets up at 2 o'clock and basically says, we have time for one more question, and that's it. Okay? So I think with that in mind, I'm going to get right to it and try and take you as smartly as I can through a pretty substantive discussion of the energy problems in Europe and globally right now, and what it has to say about the energy transition writ large. All right, so what I want to basically start with is the fact that the energy shock that is embracing Europe and to some extent has rippled back here to the United States is really revealed 4 major policy mistakes, which I think I would suggest we need to keep in mind going forward. Now, when you got up this morning, it probably wasn't in the front of your mind, but you're still looking at $4 a gallon gasoline if you do anything but buy regular. And you're looking in terms of your electricity prices, you're looking at $7 a million BTU natural gas. I just came back from Europe, 2 weeks in Europe, $8 a gallon gasoline in Europe, $35 a million BTU natural gas. That's the product of the 4 policy mistakes that I referenced just a second ago. So let's just go through those. And it began with, let's see if I get the pointer working here. Yes, no. All right, there we go. There we go. Europe, and in particular Germany, over a course of 10 to 15 years, built a tremendous dependency on Russian oil and gas, which seemed to be a really smart idea as long as Russia was a reliable supplier and a cheap supplier, but doesn't look so good at the present time. That's a pretty obvious policy mistake that was made. Second policy mistake that was made was this idea that punishing Russia with embargoes was going to work. And I'm going to show you how that hasn't worked except to punish Europe up to this point in time. That's coming up in about 30 seconds. The third one, and this is really going to be a more substantive focus of the conversation. The policymakers lost sight of certain aspects of the global oil and gas market. I had a career with ExxonMobil that started in 1972, and I went through the booms and busts, and I saw what happens when policymakers lose track of the global supply and demand balance. Well, why did they lose track of the global supply and demand balance? Basically because I would say that the climate movement was extremely successful in demonizing oil and gas production. Now, many of you, including myself, believe that there is a climate problem and that we are going to need to have an energy transition. The problem, as I think my introducer, Jim, said, is we have to get from here to there. And getting from here to there without messing things up so bad in the interim that we get distracted by the problems of inflation and energy insecurity. That's a really interesting problem. And to do that, we have to make sure that there's adequate supplies in the short and medium term while we undergo that transition. This was forgotten. So let's go and take a closer look at these things. Let me start with the dependency and the oil embargo problem. Germany is a manufacturing giant. And they decided that the way to be competitive in a world where they had to compete with East Asia was to have very inexpensive energy, which they got from Russia over the last 10, 15 years. The result of that was something like 40% of Germany's natural gas came from Russia. This put Germany in a position of acute dependence on the idea that Russia was going to be a reliable supplier. Unfortunately, they're finding out right now that Russia had other priorities. But here's the really tricky part. If you let the oil and gas supply-demand balance get too tight, the suppliers gain pricing power. And they find that if you remove a small amount of production from the market, you get an outsized price response. That's what produced this very interesting result. Russia cut off some natural gas supplies into Europe and saw their current account surplus balloon by almost 3 times relative to what it had been the prior year. That's the price effect that happens if you take your eye off the overall supply-demand balance in a commodity market like oil and gas. So we're in a situation now where Europe is facing record prices, shortages, winter problems, inflation, recession, and the effects that that has on governments. Now, I think the next point, and another one that I believe is not widely understood, most of the attention is focusing on Europe's natural gas problem. And that's legitimate because they have to get through the winter. But the bigger, longer-term problem is going to be oil. Because there is things that Europe can do in a funny kind of way. Natural gas is an easier thing to replace. Europe has coal plants they can put back on. That's not great for the environment, but for getting through a crisis, it's something that they can do. They can keep their nuclear plants running, which they were in the process of shutting down. They can build LNG import terminals, and there is new supplies in LNG that are going to come on over the next couple of years. So I would say that Europe is going to have a rough winter, but probably by 23, 24, the natural gas problem, even with the dependency that they have on Russia, is going to be worked out. But on oil, oil is going to be tight. And don't be fooled by the current decline in gasoline prices that you've been seeing. There's 2 things driving that, and they're both temporary. Thing 1 is the markets are looking at recession right now. Thing 2 is there's been a tremendous release of petroleum from the American Strategic Petroleum Reserve, about 1 million barrels a day. That has a limit. Also, if China ever comes back on after their COVID lockdowns, you're going to see another flip up in demand. So don't take the current decline in gasoline prices to the bank. Now, let's talk about this global supply and demand balance. When we went through the oil shocks of 1973, 1979, and 2007, 2008, what did we learn from that the policymakers should have kept in mind? What you learn from that is you need to have 5+ million barrels a day of spare capacity in the global oil market. And a good chunk of that has to be outside of countries that don't like you or have other agendas. Okay? If you get to the point where the only spare capacity in the global oil market is in places like Saudi Arabia and Russia, you are handing them a giant stick to beat you with. This is the policy mistake that has been forgotten in the context of the idea that, my God, we got to get off fossil fuels. Well, getting off fossil fuels when they're 80+% of your energy is a long-term transition. Trying to get from here to there by basically discouraging production in the short term is to hand people that don't like you a giant club to beat you with. And let me look a little closer at that. Now, forgive me for the small numbers on this page, but I'm going to explain what we have here in this way. What you have in the right-hand column, this is March of 2022, right 1 month after the Ukrainian crisis breaks. This is global supply and spare capacity, okay? So the bottom number, wow, it looks like we got 5.4 million barrels a day of spare capacity in the market. Where is it located? Oh my goodness. We got 3 million barrels a day in Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. Okay, well, what about the other two? My God, we got it in Iran and Libya. Iran is no friend. Libya is a chaotic place that could shut down tomorrow in the midst of a civil war. This is forgetting what the supply and demand balance has to have in terms of reliable spare capacity. Now, this is a little chart of oil prices over a long period of time. You see the blue lines up and down, okay? And so you see these gigantic peaks. What you find is that every time you got one of those peaks, we forgot this lesson. Okay. This is the most recent episode of that, 2007, 2008. People don't remember, you had $145 barrel crude oil price in 2008, first half of 2008. This is the disappearance of Saudi capacity, spare capacity at that point in time. How much of you heard about this and the discussion of oil prices at this point in time? Have you heard the administration talk about, gee, we need to restore the supply-demand balance and make sure that there's sufficient reserve in the global system? No, because we have all bought into the idea that, my God, we got to get off fossil fuels, so let's discourage production right now. This is Europe's 10-point plan to deal with the Russian problem. Now, there are a lot of good ideas up here, okay? What do we got? Well, we're not going to sign any new gas contracts with Russia. That sounds like a good idea. Okay, we're going to speed up the replacement of gas boilers with heat pumps. We're going to replace Russian supplies with gas from alternative sources, assuming there's some available. What you don't see here is we're going to increase our own production. Now, interestingly enough, you know where some of the best rocks for fracking are? Germany. Wow. You know how many countries in Europe have fracking bans? 5 or 6. Okay? I'm going to show you that in just a second. Now, one of the responses that you hear to the Ukrainian crisis and today's prices and inflation is more renewables. I think it's important to understand what renewables give you and what they don't give you. Renewables are an important component of the long-term transition, and they're a very good addition to the generation of electricity in the present day. However, they're not a very good alleviator of an immediate oil and gas supply crunch. Now, let's sort of talk about why that is. Well, how much of your demand is transportation? Cars, trucks, aviation fuel, windmills and solar panels going to help with that? Not really. Basically, wind and solar substitute for existing generation that you already have that's using fossil fuel. So it changes the fuel mix in what you're producing. That's good for the environment, but it doesn't necessarily take away from oil and gas demand unless there's massive adoption of electric vehicles, which is not something that happens in response to a short-term crisis. That's going to take time. How frequently do you replace your car? Okay. Are you going to run out and buy an electric vehicle today because of what's going on in the Ukraine? Probably not. Okay, so the idea that more renewables is going to solve our problem of our immediate supply and demand problem, no, it's part of a longer-term solution. What are we going to do in the meantime? That's the question we're going to go to next. Well, one of the things we could do is get Europe to increase its own production. I thought it'd be important to show you how little they're doing on this score. This is 2021 production, 3 million barrels a day, total production in Europe. Okay, 3% of global oil production. 2 billion barrels a day, that was in Norway. The rest is pretty much in the UK. Virtually nothing on the European continent. Let's see, Europe using almost 15 million barrels a day, so they're producing 20% of their consumption, and they're importing almost 5 million barrels a day from Russia. Dependence on Russian oil as well as gas. Now, it would be one thing if Europe didn't have any potential. This is their potential in gas, but they have significant potential in oil as well. Some of you may have noticed that the new government in the UK has made a radical turn on this. Okay, they're going to start re-drilling in the North Sea, and they're going to start fracking the production capacity that they have for natural gas in the UK. Interestingly enough, as far as oil is concerned, Germany, as I said, has the best rocks in the continent of Europe. They're the source rocks for the production that was in the North Sea. Okay? But that has been a victim of a fracking ban for the last 10 years. So what is to be done here? Well, if I have dedicated environmentalists in the audience, they're probably churning as they're listening to this discussion. Okay? Because they're sort of saying, you know, I understand we have a short-term problem, but I hate getting re-hooked on fossil fuels. So this I characterize as the short-term, long-term dilemma in our current situation. It's a bigger dilemma than you might imagine, because to green light oil and gas production project, you need to be able to see like a 20-year horizon where you could produce. Okay? So the underinvestment that's going on in oil at this point in time is really a kind of a, I'm going to use an emotion-charged word, a kind of a constipation that is a combination of this environmental pressure and the fact that it's very difficult to see a long-term horizon for projects at this point in time. So how do we address that problem, and how do we talk to the environmental community about solving the short, medium-term issues and not putting the transition sort of off indefinitely? I have a couple of thoughts for you on that, and they're here in the terms of fracking and enhanced oil recovery, which interestingly enough, and I don't think people have made this point, they're actually well aligned with the energy transition. I'm just curious, can anybody guess as to why something like fracking for oil and gas would be aligned with the energy transition?
Existing production.
No, I mean, it is existing production, but let's say you want to grow it.
We can bring it domestic rather than relying on.
It's domestic, but we want it in Europe too, yeah.
we have got to keep it clean and under control.
Well,
we cannot create earthquakes in Oklahoma. We don't want to use it in North Carolina because the rock's too shabby. But we can use it where the rock is safe.
And that has to be job one. Okay.
Well,
okay.
That's what the Exxon needs to be doing.
I don't disagree. But the factors that I would put in front of you as to why it's well aligned with the energy transition is simply this. It's easy to start and it's easy to stop. Okay? If you're going to do offshore oil production, it's going to take you 6 years from exploration to actually bringing production on. I mean, the exploration process is challenging and arduous, and if you find something, you've got to build a platform or a ship, a drill ship someplace and put it out there and install it, and boy, you need a long-term horizon for that. But right now, we're producing 6 to 7 million barrels a day in West Texas and New Mexico, and it's just drilling. It's just onshore drilling. You take the rigs out there, you punch holes in the ground, you drill horizontally, you frack it, and it produces. Not only that, the wells that come from fracking decline rapidly. You get a big portion of the production in the first year, which is why fracking is much more like an industrial process than is, traditional oil and gas drilling on large reservoirs. You're drilling into what is known in the industry as source rock rather than reservoirs. That, I don't know if you've ever seen like a diagram of a frack well. They'll go down 3,000 to 4,000 feet. They'll go horizontal for a mile or two in the source rock, and then they'll frack it 30 times. It's a very, very different process. So why is that aligned with our problem? You can get a lot of production in the short and medium term if we make the kind of progress on the energy transition. Slow it down. The wells will deplete rapidly. They're easy to have that production go away. I don't think these characteristics of fracking have been sufficiently appreciated, or that they are in many ways well suited to dovetail with what we're trying to do in the energy transition. Now the second one that goes on the list here is enhanced oil recovery, which is, how many of you know that you use CO2 in enhanced oil recovery? So somebody was telling me that they had consulting relationship with Kinder Morgan. And Kinder Morgan does this out in West Texas. They have a pipeline that comes down from the four corners of New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, and Arizona, and brings CO2, and they put it in the reservoirs in West Texas to enhance production. So enhanced oil recovery has a couple of interesting characteristics that's well suited for the energy transition. One, it's a sink for carbon. And so if you put carbon capture on industrial facilities or power plants, you need a place to put the CO2. Enhanced oil recovery is the best place to put CO2 because it's not just a pure cost. You get some additional revenue out of it. You get increased production. The other thing about enhanced oil recovery is this is the place where people are going to prove up their at-scale enhanced carbon capture technology. If you take the flue gas out of a natural gas power plant, 4% of that flue gas is CO2. Most of that gas that comes out of the stack is something else. So your carbon capture technology has to be able to identify the 4% of CO2 molecules that are in that, pull that out, and then you got to do something with it. So the technologies people have been working on for the last 5 or 6 years are not just how do we capture that CO2, but how do we do it at the lowest possible cost? Because this is pure cost. we've been living in a world where we assigned no cost to this. Now we're saying we are going to assign a cost to it. Well, we want that cost to be as bearable as possible because, you know, capital is scarce and has to be allocated to a lot of things. Enhanced oil recovery, which gives you additional revenue, is a great place to put CO2. And that's pretty much what I just covered in this particular slide. Enhanced oil recovery is going to help develop carbon capture, which is the second pathway to decarbonization. The first pathway is we get the fossil fuels out of electricity, and we try and electrify everything we can. The second is what we can't electrify, we have to capture the carbon and do something with it. So the U.S. could add 2 to 3 million barrels a day of production in the next couple of years, and there's tremendous amounts of fracking capacity around the world. We did a conference on global fracking back in 2016. We were stunned at how much capacity there is around the world to do this. It's really a question, nobody's gone after it. So if you think that supplies of oil and gas are tight and there's not a whole lot we can do, that's not correct. You would have to mobilize this fracking operation and use it as a short to medium term bridge to the energy transition. I want to just say something about Groningen. In terms of European options, Groningen is the largest natural gas field in Europe. This goes to your point. They're having earthquakes there. That's why the Dutch government basically said you had to shut it down. Okay? But Groningen could really do a great deal in the short run to help Europe get through its immediate problem. And it has the potential for being a sink for CO2 storage going forward. Other big lesson I want to leave you with. We need a new attitude on infrastructure. The environmental community has perfected the legal and other means for stopping things. And they're extremely good at it. But the problem is that they have handed those tools to people with other agendas. So, you know, what I'll call the NIMBY crowd, which may be a lot of people in this room, we can stop things too. Okay? We can stop things, and some of those things probably deserve to be stopped. But if you're serious about the climate and the energy transition, we can't stop everything. And in some ways, we are going to have to enable infrastructure to get going. Why? Well, where's the wind and solar? Solar's in places like Arizona. Wind is in places like Oklahoma and West Texas. Where's the electricity demand? Someplace else. Someplace else. Duke Energy looked at trying to bring Oklahoma wind to North Carolina, because wind isn't really good in North Carolina unless you go offshore. Trying to build long distance transmission through 5 states. Okay? So, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act, this whole discussion with Joe Manchin about permitting and infrastructure, that's the tip of the iceberg on this. We're going to have to start to find a way to allow some of this stuff to happen if we're going to be able to tackle these problems. This is a chart. I did a conference on new nuclear and climate strategy. I'm almost done. In last November. And we had some environmental groups in the room with the nuclear utilities. So one of the environmental groups put this slide up, which was their thoughts on how to get to 80 to 90% renewables on the grid going forward. What's embedded in here is a tremendous amount of long distance transmission and new industries, in particular hydrogen manufacturing industry. If you're going to have a hydrogen manufacturing industry, you're going to have to move hydrogen around, which means you're going to have hydrogen pipelines. So that I simply make, will some of this happen? Undoubtedly. Are we going to be able to do it without allowing infrastructure to get built? No, we're not. So that brings us to the end. Huge mistakes on energy security, the embargo's really not working. Counting on renewables long-term, but not for the short, medium term to solve an energy security or price problem. Fracking and EOR are potentially aligned with the energy transition and should get, I think, a very, very heavy consideration going forward. And with that, thank you. I think we have a little time for questions.
Let's stand while you ask so we can hear.
Thank you very much. It was a great talk. Where do you think small nuclear stands in this energy transition?
It's a very good question. You live in the Carolinas, so you. The question was where does small nuclear stand in this energy transition? So you live in the Carolinas. You get most of you get your electricity from Duke. Duke has filed a net zero 250 plan, and it's a very, very interesting thing to look at. They're actually talking to the Utilities Commission about it right now. So Duke presently has 57 gigawatts of capacity. To get to net zero in 2050, they have to build that out to 105. It includes a 40 gigawatt build out of renewables, 13 gigawatts of battery storage, and keeping all their existing nuclear plants on. Even with all of that, they have 13 gigawatts of, we don't know what it is. They call it Zephyrs, zero emissions, load following resources. Small modular nuclear is the leading candidate to fill that hole. At the conference that I referenced a few minutes ago, we had NuScale, Terrestrial, and TerraPower there. They have very interesting technologies, and small modular is a real candidate to complement renewables in the electricity transition. Questions are about its economics. If you build a large light water reactor, you can build 2 gigawatts in one site. These small modular reactors, 50, 60 megawatts. Even if you line them up, you're going to have 500 to 900 megawatts. So you're giving up a lot of scale. How are you going to recover that? Well, the small modular people basically say, because we can build it faster and cheaper than these really large facilities that have all of these nasty overruns like Vogtle and Summer in Georgia and South Carolina. We'll see. There are some of those projects are going to go ahead in Eastern Europe, and we'll see how they do. Personally, I think they're going to play a very significant role. Yeah.
After 30 years of hearing, okay, the oil's going to run out, we're going to, the gas prices are going to go up, and then not going to be enough. We got to go to electric, and then electric cars getting popular. A lot of electric cars. In the last 6 months, I'm hearing this story from conservative/Republican people that electric cars are terrible. Where is that coming from? I mean.
Okay, to condense that question, are electric cars terrible? And if not, where is that idea coming from?
Fox News.
You know, really, we're living in a time of, manufactured outrage and, polarized reporting. And I think one of the key roles for the university is to try and get through that mess and try and see what's more objective. So some thoughts on electric vehicles. First thought is basically they're now more or less competitive if electricity stays cheap. Okay, unfortunately it's a moving target because, all right, gas prices go up, but also electricity goes up. But at the same time, as demand for electric vehicles has increased, the cost of metals that go into electric vehicles has gone up. I think some of you may have seen that the price of lithium has gone through the roof in the last couple of days. Copper, nickel, these metals are big parts of battery manufacturing. I don't know, this electric bus takes 16 times the copper of a non-electric bus. These are the kinds of issues that are kind of over the horizon. And, and your environmental community will not talk about this stuff in the objective way that it really needs to. So the short answer is electric vehicles are going to have their place. I think they're particularly good in urban and suburban areas where you can charge them at night and you don't have to drive them long distances. We're doing a conference on electric vehicles in February. I'm intrigued to see exactly what the advantage of this versus hybrids is. Okay?
Steve, on that issue though, are those hurdles or obstacles?
Well, they are obstacles in the sense that if the thrust of your question is, can they be overcome? So, how long does it take to get a new mine in the United States? 12 years. Could we do better than that? Yeah, but we're back to my discussion about infrastructure.
That's a regulatory issue, and not just.
It's not just a regulatory issue. It's how many legal, lawsuits get filed under the NEPA Act and so forth. I mean, what I said to you about the ability of people to stop and kill projects by delay. I mean, they killed the natural gas, the Atlantic Coast pipeline. They took it all the way to the Supreme Court, but the producers still gave up because it was just taken so long. Some of you know what it's like to do a project and have to put it on hold while it goes through, a long. That's a killer from a cost point of view. Okay, and that the people who want to stop things have figured that out. Well, we can stop everything, and then you're not going to have much of a transition. Yeah.
Last question, Steve. We have 3 minutes.
Oh, come on.
It all depends on the responses.
You have laid out a good case, and I fully agree with the fact that we've got to increase fossil fuel production in the short run. The question that I have is, what is your sense of what is short-term versus long-term in the context of the rate of increase in global temperature? It's not, point is, it's not something we can simply put off.
Yeah, it is a longer discussion, but I'm going to come back and challenge you in a different way. And that is, who's the biggest contributor to global emissions today? All right, who's building a new coal plant every 3 months? India's right behind them. So the big dilemma that I see in the whole climate issue is it doesn't do a lot to decarbonize Western Europe and the United States if we don't figure out a way to decarbonize the Eastern Hemisphere. It's one of the reasons that I believe that natural gas is an important bridge fuel. All right, and one of the reasons I'm sort of pushing this idea of fracking is that's what gave you $2 natural gas, folks. Okay, that's what gave you $2 natural gas up until last year. Okay, because it came out as associated gas with the production. So if I can advance the idea of fracking, we can do more LNG, and we can cut down the number of coal plants that we have in the Eastern Hemisphere. That's the way you make most of the progress. Most of the emissions problem in the United States has basically been replacing coal plants with natural gas.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate your time. If you're a board member, please hang around for a quick minute or two. We have
just bored. You can leave.
an item or two to discuss. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
See you around tomorrow. What's up? How are you? Oh, are you?
You got your money's worth.
Oh, that's cool. You're doing the. Yeah, it's I know you can do that thing where you go down and go up the touchdown club or whatever it is, and then go out on the field. No, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. Any more questions? See you. Make you my favorite.
Oh, yeah, we're on the same page there. Good. Thank you, Jim. Absolutely. Let me know. All right.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. You didn't mention coal. Any fit?
What wasn't controversial?
Well, I mean, you know, right now it's saving Europe's ass, and it's part of keeping the lights on and the industrial, you know, plant running while we figure out something better. Now, you can decarbonize coal.
Vivian's
Okay,
father
it's
and his
expensive.
partner developed fracking.
One of the reasons I'm a big fan of getting the
Vivian's
carbon capture
father